Today we're going to be talking about the natural birth traps. If you haven't been following me before, my name is Carly. I am a virtual doula, a childbirth educator, and a birth empowerment coach. And I help moms who want to have a natural birth to be able to plan their birth with power, to get past their fear and to stop crumbling under the pressure. Because the way that our maternity care system works is that you end up falling into these natural birth traps or something else derails your birth plan. And I talk about this inside my book, Your Empowered Birth. I basically go into the reasons why natural birth often doesn't work. You go into the hospital, you're planning a natural birth, maybe you're a first-time mom, maybe you've already had one birth experience that sucked, and you're like, this time I'm going to get my natural birth. And then you get tricked out of it again. And you're wondering, what the hell is going on? I'm doing everything right. I'm taking the birth classes. I'm reading the birth books. I'm listening to the care provider. I hired a midwife this time. What's going on? Why can't I get it? Well, the reason why you can't get it isn't that your body's broken. It's because society has basically trained you to think about birth in a way that doesn't actually serve you when it comes to physiological birth. So I'm going to teach you, my goal is to actually teach you how to start tuning into your intuition, tapping into those lost skills and arts of understanding what you want so that you don't crumble under the pressure. You don't fall into these traps anymore. If you do have any questions though, if you ever have any questions, just put it inside the chat of any one of these videos, send me a message in a DM or put it inside the actual Facebook group, put your question out there, because I'm here to basically make sure that you're not in those typical mom groups. They're going to give you a million different answers and no help. This group is different. So I've noticed like you come in here for the education, but you're not asking the questions. And then if I see a question in another mom group, I'm like, oh dear, you're asking a question in a mom group, but you're not going to get the response you want. So here is different. Here, if you ask a question, you're going to get a targeted response that's actually going to help you. In fact, if we need to go deeper, I'm going to get into the DMs with you and I'm going to ask you targeted questions to really figure out what you're looking for. And I've got over 900 resources. I get more every day. In fact, I just went to the Vancouver Baby Show and I just talked to a whole bunch more people that I'm now in connection with. Not only that, but moms that I've helped before, they've picked things up as well. If you ever have any questions about gestational diabetes or body mass index or nutrition or high blood pressure, you know what? Talk to me and then I'll connect you with Jenny. So even though sometimes your doctor will say, oh, well, you can't have a natural birth because you're older or because you have gestational diabetes, it's not true. Your body is designed to birth. Maybe you might have a complication come up and maybe your intuition might tell you that you need to do something different, that you might need to have that medical help. But that doesn't mean your entire birth plan goes out the window, and that doesn't mean you can't have a natural birth. So, natural birth trap number 16. This is a very common one, and it's very common in a lot of larger hospitals too, is the IV. Oftentimes they'll say that you need to have an IV or you need to have an IV port so that they have an open vein. If they don't immediately attach you to medication, they still want that open vein. Here's why you don't want to do that. So the whole idea of that is that they have that whole idea of something's going to go wrong and we're going to need to slip medication. Obviously, that hospital environment is used to just doing things. If you have an open vein available, it allows them to slip Pitocin whenever. It's a lot easier for them to do that. And it's harder for you to say no when the vein is already open. Not only that, but having an IV is going to distract you from the process of labor. It's going to freaking hurt, especially if you're scared of needles like I am. If you can't handle needles, that doesn't mean you can't handle a natural birth. And I was told that. If you can't handle a needle, how are you going to handle natural birth? Well, guess what? You can handle natural birth just fine, even if you hate needles, because the needle is something that is not normal. That is not a normal physiological process that your body is doing. It is an invasive procedure. It is getting into your veins that is not meant to be there. And then the second thing is that needles just freaking hurt. They just suck. So you don't want to have an open vein. You don't want to have an IV. If you are planning a natural birth, you want to decline these things. And even if your hospital says, oh, well, it's policy, that doesn't apply to you. You can still say no. It's still your choice to say no. If they keep pressuring you into it, maybe go to a different hospital. Maybe choose to show up at the very last possible minute. This is what Jenny did. The nurse wanted to take her blood, and Jenny's like, no, you're not taking my blood. I'm pushing a baby out. But the nurse didn't believe her because she had that process of, oh, I need to assess her progress. I need to do a vaginal exam. Go back and watch some of my videos about vaginal exams. They don't actually tell you anything. Jenny did not want any vaginal exams. You don't have to have an IV. You don't have to have your blood taken. That's just what they're doing to try to cover their asses. But it has nothing to do with you. You don't actually need that. Another reason they try to push the IV is because they might have a policy of no eating and drinking. Now that is not evidence-based. Your body needs fuel. Your body needs fluids. And the IV is the wrong kind of way to get those fluids because now you've got excessive fluids. This can also affect your breastfeeding. So if you are planning to breastfeed, you really don't want an IV because what happens if you've had the IV for a long time in your labor is that now your baby's got extra water weight and they weigh that baby and they're like, oh, your baby weighs X amount of pounds. Well, now your baby loses that excessive weight that wasn't meant to be there in the first place. And they say your baby's not gaining enough because your baby is now underweight, way underweight than what they were at birth. Well, duh, because you had all that water weight. Now you're puffy, your baby was puffy when born because of all that water weight. And now they're saying you have to supplement with formula because breastfeeding is apparently not working because they're going by how much your baby weighed at birth. But they've skewed that with the IV. So that is natural birth trap number 16. You don't want that IV. It's going to mess with your ability to have food and drink during labor. It's going to make you end up having more pain during labor. It's going to allow them to have access to your veins for Pitocin or whatever else they want to slip in there. And it's going to affect your breastfeeding. You don't want any of that, okay? That basically restricts your movement as well. You now have an IV to worry about. And if you pull it because you're trying to get into movement, well, now that's also more pain that you have to deal with. Don't do it. Don't do it. Natural birth trap number 17 is still on the same idea of restricting your movement, the electronic fetal monitor. Now, the reason they came up with this in the first place is because way back in the 70s, they thought that by doing the electronic fetal monitor, they would be able to pick up on babies that were truly in distress and stop cerebral palsy from happening. Guess what? Doesn't make a single difference. They then debunked that study and recognized that it actually didn't improve outcomes. If anything, being on the electronic fetal monitor meant more C-sections and augmentation of labor, which speeding up with drugs and other interventions were happening. Because now you've got mom stuck in the bed and they're checking the monitoring strip and they're saying, oh, there's a decel in the heart rate. We need to do a C-section. The truth is that that decel that they picked up might actually just be normal because the baby heart does actually slow down when there's a contraction and then it speeds back up again. But the machines are not that reliable. What's more reliable is you going inward, trusting your intuition and noticing what your baby is doing. If you feel that there's a problem, it doesn't matter if that strip is right or wrong. You feel there's a problem, they need to listen to you. Same thing as if they say that strip is wrong, but you're like, but my baby feels fine and I don't feel any problems are happening. They're going to try to convince you that there's a problem happening because of that stupid strip. Now, the reason they like that is because they use those when they are trying to basically cover their ass later if you tried to sue them. But again, these things are not accurate. Sometimes the machine doesn't pick up the heart rate because the baby has already descended. And if that's the case, then they're going by, they're saying we can't find the heartbeat. You're panicking. Now your labor is going to slow down because a tiger is chasing you, basically, and you can't relax. Now labor is going to hurt more. Now things are going to stop. Now your cervix is going to close up. Now your body's going to say, hey, it's not safe for us to birth this baby. And now they're saying, well, because labor stopped on you and your baby is decelerating, we have to give you a C-section. All because of the stupid fetal monitor. So if you want to know more about that, though, go to evidence-basedbirth.com, or you can go check out this book, The Thinking Woman's Guide to a Better Birth. It talks about the fetal monitor. And actually, my favorite book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage, also talks a little bit more about how the fetal monitor interferes with physiological birth. So, natural birth trap number 18, resisting making noise. So, in our society, we've basically grown up being taught that we need to be quiet during birth. We can't be screaming. If we're screaming, something's wrong, and that means we need to medicate. So, nurses who are basically used to giving the epidural, they love it because you're quieter and they don't have to hear you and they don't have to hear those noises. And we've been trained to think that when you're making noise, you're in pain. Now, this is not the case in labor. In labor, making noise is actually similar to the noises that you make during sex. If you are having sex and you're really getting into your orgasm, and you're trying to hold back, your body is trying to tell you, you got to make noise, but you're trying to be quiet, that orgasm is not going to be as explosive for you as if you actually let go. The same thing in birth. It's the same sex organs, it's the same hormonal response. So if your body, if you're feeling like you need to make noise, make those noises. In fact, the noises will actually help you get into a trance so that labor hurts less. If you're holding back on making the noises because you don't want to offend anybody or scare anybody, then, or you're too self-conscious to make those noises because you're worried how you sound, then what you're doing is you're staying in your thinking brain, not in your primal animal brain. Animals do not care if they make noise. And I've actually experimented with this. When I was in my labor with my second baby, I actually was like, okay, I'm not going to make noise through this surge. Oh, that didn't feel very good. That actually hurt a lot. Okay, I'm going to make noise through this one. Oh, wow, I didn't feel any pain that time. And things actually moved downward. And not only that, but I went into this awesome trance. So that's what you want to do, is you want to be able to make noise. And if you're in a hospital environment where they really try to discourage you making noise, you just make those noises anyway. You send that nurse away and you ask for somebody who's actually going to be able to handle it. And this is also why I recommend a doula for partners as well. Because even though your partner's trying to support you, if you're suddenly making really loud noises, especially during transition, your partner might freak out if they don't know that this is normal. So what I did with my client, Rebecca, is I trained her partner. I said, you know, she might make some really weird noises and it's going to sound like sex. It's going to be really off-putting for you. You're going to wonder what the hell's going on. And I'm just here to tell you that when she makes those noises, it's normal. And then she's like, well, what if I don't make noises? Like, well, some people do have very quiet labors. It depends on what your physiological response is. She had had 1 induction and 2 C-sections out of it. So she's had 2 babies before. Both ended up with a cesarean. She'd never experienced a physiological labor. So she didn't know what her body's response was. And I said, we don't know what your response is going to be, but I just want you to know that it's normal. So natural birth trap number 18, you want to be able to make noise. If your body is telling you to make noise, do it. Okay. And that's why you need to have the right environment for your birth and the right facilitators and the right support. Because if you have those things, then you're going to feel less inhibited. You're not going to feel self-conscious. You need to basically give birth where you're going to be able to let go of all your inhibitions. And that doesn't mean leaving your dignity at the door. That means that you surrender to the process, but you still feel powerful, like a powerful goddess giving birth to your baby. Leaving your dignity at the door is something else. That's when the care provider is like, oh, well, you're just going to have to give up all your power and just accept that you're going to be embarrassed and feel disempowered. No, we're not doing that. We're not leaving our dignity at the door. We're stepping into our power. We're surrendering to the sensations of birth, but we're not giving up our power to anyone. And again, my book, Your Empowered Birth, will help you understand how to reclaim your power in your birth. Natural birth trap number 19 is being on your back. So oftentimes this is the default position that you see inside the movies. You see this on TV. You've seen this in like the hospital birth culture. Most people end up giving birth on their backs. It's not because it's the most effective position. It's because it's the most convenient position for your care provider. So they're able to sit on a stool and watch as the baby's coming out. They don't have to do anything. Midwives, however, they do it in every position. They'll catch your baby while you're standing. They'll catch your baby while you're leaning over on all fours. They'll catch your baby no matter what you're doing. But doctors have been trained oftentimes with inanimate torsos, and they're sitting in front of these inanimate torsos that are on their backs and pulling a baby out that's slowly being pushed out by either a student is pushing on the stomach or the machine itself is mechanical and pushing the baby out that way. But the fact is that neither of these things are actual physiological birth. Up until the moment that people were giving birth on their backs because of some really creepy king who in France, centuries and centuries ago, he liked to watch his mistresses and his wife give birth. He had that fetish, but he couldn't see anything when they were on all fours. He couldn't see anything if they were upright on the birth stool. So he started to order the women to give birth on their back with their feet up in the air so that he could see the whole thing. That's what he wanted. And because he was the king, what happened is the nobility followed suit. They're like, oh, this is how royalty gives birth, so this is how we give birth. And then because the nobles were doing it, then the bourgeoisie, the working class, the merchants, they saw that. And because they were the middle class at the time, they're like, we want to be like the rich ones, so we're going to do that. And then it slowly trickled down until finally everybody was birthing on their backs. And then this is also the point where the obstetric community came in and they invented the forceps. Again, this was because babies were getting stuck by moms being on their backs. So rather than recognize that, hey, maybe this new thing that we've started doing is not exactly effective and it's causing problems, they were like, no, women's bodies are just effective. So we're going to fix the problem because we like women on their backs. It's easier for us. So we're not going to go back to the way it was. We're just going to pull the babies out with forceps. This is actually how a lot of interventions came to be in birth, is that you mess with the physiological process and suddenly something's not working. Rather than take a step back and recognize that maybe you shouldn't have messed with that in the first place, which requires them to address their ego and say, maybe you don't know everything you think you do. They're not going to do that. They're just going to invent something else to make them still be the hero. Because unfortunately, maternity care is based on the idea of misogyny. Our bodies are defective, our bodies are broken, and that the medical system is this be-all, end-all, magical God that comes in and saves you. It's not true, though. You have the power to birth your baby. So please stay off your back, because this narrows your pelvic outlet. Not only that, but it's more painful to be on your back. Your baby gets less oxygen when you're on your back. Maybe if your instincts tell you to be on your back, you can do that. And there are cases where you'll sometimes be like, I need to be on my back for this contraction, or I need to be on my back for this moment for pushing. But other than that, most of the time, you're gonna be like, this is just too uncomfortable. I wanna be off my back. But you've been trained to believe that you need to be on your back in the bed because that's the way everybody's done it. Okay, so that's natural birth trap number 19. Finally, natural birth trap number 20 is the biggest one of all. And it's what all of these natural birth traps basically amount to. Mainstream natural birth education or childbirth education that still teaches the medical model, doesn't go into physiological birth, doesn't honor the physiological birth process, doesn't recognize that one size does not fit all, and continues to teach you these natural birth traps over and over again to make it seem like it's routine and normal. And that if you don't do it that way, that there's something wrong with you, or that you're not doing what's in the best interest for your baby, or that you're selfish for wanting to have your birth with more autonomy than if you just follow their plan. Not only that, but if you have one of those pregnancies and births that deviates from the textbook, and you might have a time in your birth when things are going to deviate because you're an individual. Did you get your period at the same time as your best friend? Probably not. Maybe once you synced up your cycles, you might have, but did you start your period at the same time, like same age, same exact month on the calendar, same week? No, you probably did not. And not only that, but how is your period like in regards to everybody else's? Like maybe you have a cycle that's different. Maybe it's a 31-day cycle instead of a 28. Maybe it's a 27-day cycle. Maybe it's a 34-day cycle. Honestly, even like month to month, your cycle can change. So I've actually got an app now that tracks my cycle just so that I can see where I fluctuate. And I fluctuate anywhere from 29 days to 31 days, although sometimes I've gone to 34 days. Thankfully, I wasn't worried about being late because I don't have a partner currently at this moment. But you can see that you may not ovulate on day 14. So then your pregnancy might be a little longer or a little shorter depending on when you did ovulate and when you actually conceived, because ovulation and conception are two different things. So if you've had sex a few days before you ovulated, sperm can still hang around, and then that one sperm will get to that egg once you ovulate. And other times you might ovulate and you had sex, and then conception happens right away. But you don't know. You don't actually know when you conceive. If you can really tune in, you might be able to tell the signs. But even growth scans and dating scans can be off as much as a week because babies don't all grow at the same rate. They don't all grow at the same curve. And you know what? You're just unique. Your physiological process is unique. Even if you've had one pregnancy before or more pregnancies before, this baby and this pregnancy is completely different. So the fact that you're completely different every time, the fact that you have your own process that's going to follow, means that you don't fit in that box. You're not fitting in that textbook. And mainstream, one-size-fits-all childbirth education is not going to work for you. You need to understand the physiological process, and you need to understand the variations of what can come in. But most importantly, you need to understand how to tap into your intuition. And that's why my book, Your Empowered Birth, is so powerful, because it's not typical childbirth education. What it does is it helps you tune into your own unique process, ask the right questions so that you can get the education that you need so that you can follow your own journey when it comes to pregnancy and birth, and then you can reclaim your power and not fall into those natural birth traps, not get tricked into a C-section, not get tricked into an induction, not crumble under the pressure or think you have to agree to routine vaginal exams or tests or any procedure that you don't actually want, don't think you really need, but have been programmed by society to believe that if you don't do it, you're a bad mom. So that's what I have for you of the natural birth traps. Again, if you want that guide, you go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/guide. You can pick it up. There's 20 traps. And please share these videos. If you're on YouTube later, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And if you're in the Facebook group, make sure you're telling your friends about this Facebook group, because honestly, I'm just committed to getting you all of the information that you need to make an informed choice and to understand how your body works. If you have any questions and you put them in the chat, I will read them later and I will address them. If there's anything we need to talk about, you can always reach out to me, Carly@empoweringmomsbirth.com, or slide into my DMs. I love to talk to you. I love to share this stuff. And I was talking a lot in the Vancouver Baby Show because It's still not out there. It's still not being taught. You're still not getting all the information that you need. So this group and the way that I teach this material is very different from a lot of childbirth educators, because I understand that you are a unique individual. I understand that you're not one size fits all. You don't fit into a textbook, and that's okay. You don't have to fit into a textbook. If you want to have a C-section and you're like, I don't really want a natural birth, I'm planning a C-section, hey, that's okay too. I actually do have resources on that as well. Natural birth is just where I shine the most because it's my favorite thing to talk about. And at the same time, when I'm coaching my clients who want to have a natural birth after having multiple cesareans, we do actually talk about what they can do to make an emergency cesarean or a planned cesarean a positive experience if at any point they feel they need to deviate from the plan. The bottom line is it's got to be your decision. It can't be someone else's decision. You can't be planning your birth from fear, because when you do that, you're following somebody else's roadmap for you. And then you're going to have regrets. And then you're going to lose that connection to your partner. You're going to lose that connection to yourself. You're going to lose that connection to your baby. You're going to not feel as confident in your motherhood. You're going to be questioning and doubting yourself and wondering, why did this happen? What did I do wrong? And the truth is, you didn't do anything wrong. All that happened is that you, for a moment, doubted yourself, and rather than sitting with that moment and sitting with that feeling and going, no, I'm feeling this right now, but it's not my truth, and stepping forward and using those tools, instead, you just step back, you froze. And that's a trauma response, and it's also a physiological response that happens when we're in fear. It's normal. Nothing wrong with you at all. All right. So next week, I'm going to have a new topic. If you do have an idea of what you would like to learn, you can always send me a message, again, carly@empoweringmomsbirth.com, or slide into the DMs and let me know what you want to learn about. And maybe I'll bring in an expert to teach on it if I'm not able to teach on it fully myself, or maybe I'll teach on that topic because it's something that I actually know a lot about, but I haven't been focused on. Okay, so this group is really for you. If you want to know something, just tell me and I'll teach it. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.